Last week on the Nicoletti Show. Without further ado, let's welcome him to the show, Sam G. Sam, brother, what's up, man?
Nice to be here, man. If you're not doing multiple exit strategies and you don't have them in your back pocket and you don't know how to utilize them, you'll just lose. Because I'll beat you in every single conversation with the seller because I can either offer more or close on a better timeline than you can.
Mm-hmm. What do people need to know about sales that they really need to fine tune on to get these deals?
So there's two concepts that I live by. The first concept is there's not a single thing that you can say on a phone call that will mess up a transaction. As long as you're real and as long as you know what you're talking about and where you're taking that conversation. You just have to be extremely authentic when you're on the phone because you just have to take yourself outside of the shoes of a salesperson. Building relationships. When you work on one channel, you constantly have to work on it. Right?
What are you always looking for in those kind of partnerships?
So the only thing that matters is results. What are the other partners bringing as far as results to the table? Because everything else is just noise.
Got to get this from the sales guy himself. What is your best tip for sharpening your negotiation skills?
If I was to point just one thing out, I would say go back to your calls and listen to them. So record yourself and then go back to your own calls and listen to your own calls in full. You'll be able to pick the mistakes better than anybody else that watches your videos. Everybody who wants to know exactly what to say on these phone calls, how to say it, I will send you a PDF copy of my acquisition script. I wrote it all myself. I was on an 8-hour flight and I went in and I just made this absolutely the most dangerous acquisition script ever.
Okay.
If you can't get a deal by just reading that script to the sellers, I'll give you a $50 gift card. No joke.
I love this.
Literally. So I will give that, I'll send that to you. You can attach it to this episode and then people can go and have it for absolutely free.
We got the mug for Sam, the Nicoletti Show mug. So that's for you. Now you can talk to sellers, be on the phone. You got a probate deal, then you'll be talking to them.
I'm going to pull it up as soon as they say, oh, my parents died and I got this house. Okay.
That'd be a whole reel, right?
Yeah.
Sam, love it. Great tips, great advice, great final words, final thoughts. Thank you so much again for coming on this episode. Really appreciate it, man. Great value to the community out there. And welcome back to another episode on the Nicoletti Show. If you missed any of that episode last week, go back, check it out, and go back to all the episodes, right? There's always so much in these episodes that you don't want to miss. And if you want to find more of our content, scan the QR code at the top of the screen. That's where you're going to get all of our content and social media like YouTube, Instagram, you can find the show on iTunes and Spotify, and find us on Facebook as well. We just got tons of content out there on the show. And of course, all the education on probates, quiet titles, business tips, you name it. You don't want to miss that kind of stuff. And tonight we have another jam-packed fire episode with the one and only Holly Subia. And Holly is so knowledgeable when it comes to this niche in probate, finding people, doing digging on data. You don't want to miss this because so many people are giving up on deals because they're not doing it the right way. So when Holly comes on, she's going to dive in on this stuff. And I got to say to everybody that's out there, drop comments, ask questions. That's what this is about, engaging with the audience. And I got my pen and paper. I'm ready to take notes from Holly's episode tonight. I hope you are too. So let's rock this thing. Hey, everybody. My name is Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate and bring in the best in the game. No matter what market they're in, where they're located, what real estate area they're in, whether it's in real estate or maybe it's marketing and branding to real estate. Maybe it's commercial deals or shopping centers or Airbnbs, you name it. We want to bring on the best that can provide the best value to you on how you can take your company to the next level. On our show today, We have the one and only Holly Subia. She is a gem, and I love her smile, and she's always full of energy, ready to give, so smart, and she is always diving in that probate niche, the weird and different, the messy title, and I feel like a lot of people, more than ever, that listen to the show, that are at the conferences, that are at the events, are wanting to get into more of these deals. With more competition means trying to find more deals where it's a little bit stickier that maybe some of these people don't want to go after. And when you get into that world, you got to dig. You got to do a lot of research. And Holly is one of those that loves the digging, loves getting into research. And I know she is a part of the Florida Sell Now team, and they're killing it in the Southwest Florida and all Florida market. And she's just amazing as a person. So without further ado, let's welcome Holly to the show. Holly, you made it. We did it. We are here. How are you?
I'm so good, Al. As you know, this stuff lights me up, so I'm genuinely pumped to be here.
Yes, love it. And it was always such a blast seeing you and Stephanie on my probate tour last year when you guys got to speak on looking for heirs, doing digging on death certificates, going back into the census. And I'm sure you can tell everybody, Holly, that what we're seeing out there in the market is more of a way of people trying to find these deep deals, right? These deals that a lot of people don't want to go after, but you got to do the research, you got to do the digging, and we're going to dive in on that. Holly, for those that don't know, how did you find your way into this real estate niche specifically?
Yeah. My real estate journey actually started back in 2016. I'm from Northern California, and so I actually got my real estate license part-time. I hung it under Keller Williams, and I was working for the state full-time. So it was very much a passion project of mine. But I really didn't have the flexibility to dive in full steam, and so but during that time, my sister, Stephanie Shepard, who I know a lot of your community knows, she was actually diving in headfirst into real estate in the Texas market. And so she would be calling me, nonstop, sharing her crazy stories and, hairball situations. And I would do my best to follow along, of course, but if you're not really in this realm, it can be hard to really follow along and know kind of what questions to ask to really understand the situation. So anyways, unfortunately, I did have to step back away to continue pursuing my career full time with the state of California. But it was a great learning experience. I attended my first tax sale auction in Sacramento in 2016, and that was a rush for sure. So definitely connected with a lot of great real estate professionals, investors, lenders, etc. And it wasn't until I think 2023. I was living here in Portland, Oregon for the last, few years or so. And Stephanie brought this role to my attention with Florida Sell Now for a research specialist position. And I just glanced at the job description and just knew this is it. This was my lane, the role, the challenge, everything. And of course, it gave me the opportunity to learn from the best, my sister. So uh, interviewed with Florida Still Now, and it was a hit right off the bat, and it's kind of full sailing from there. And then, of course, being introduced to you, and just falling in love with the probate world, something I'd never been exposed to before, really set the course for my career now. So yeah, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be able to be, I guess, in a position to give back. So yes, amped to be here.
Of course. And we love having you here. And of course, a shout out to Stephanie Shepard, twin sister.
Yes,
And she is killing
yes.
it. Everybody loves Steph. And she's so great at locating heirs and finding people and doing digging. And I can think of a number of projects that Stephanie and I have worked on where I've watched her magic at play, trying to find death certificates and do the digging. And of course, the shout out to the Florida Sell Now team, Mark and Dominic, Mark Rado, Dominic Andrioli, just killing it, getting all these deals, loving what they're doing out there. And it's great that you get to be the research specialist, because then you do the digging behind the scenes of how do you find a lot of these different issues. And Holly, when it comes to these deals, The first thing that a lot of people want to be able to look at is to see if they can evaluate and how to move forward on these types of deals that they're not the conventional ones, right? They're probates, they're ones with incomplete data. Maybe the probate was started, they can't finish it. Maybe there's ownership issues, or maybe the probate's done. Now everybody doesn't know what to do. And sometimes a lot of people are waiting on the thing to be given on a silver platter, right? But really, that's not how it happens. You need to do the research. So, what's the real opportunity behind moving forward with these deals, and how do you evaluate them as a research specialist?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, with my role with Florida Cell now, I've been given a lot of flexibility to expand it over time. And I think the first step really is to underwrite the opportunity, and that can vary depending on what sort of platforms you're using. But honestly, whether you have various softwares or you don't, I always start with just verifying the owner information. So my first step, people will say, is this worth it? Is this opportunity worth it based on maybe the data indicators that we have? Or if you just come across, you're driving for dollars, you see a property that looks majorly distressed, vacant, and you want to start to do some research on it to really evaluate, should I pursue this or not? Always start with the property appraiser site, and in Florida, at least, everyone has access to that. And it's such a basic step that I think a lot of rookies might overlook. But essentially, what I'm trying to do is verify the owner on record with the property appraiser, but don't just stop there. Definitely review the deed history. And this is something that my sister Stephanie also trained me pretty heavily on, just because there's a lot of language or just small indicators within the deed history that could really set you either back or push you ahead of your competitors in getting in contact with the right person, or just knowing where to go and what hoops you have to jump through. So I would say, when you're underwriting the unknown, definitely start with owner verification and the deed history review. And also with the deed history review, take note of what kinds of deeds are recorded. So some opportunities are going to be a lot less heavy than others. It could strictly be, Holly Subia acquired the property in 2020 via warranty deed as an unmarried woman. Easy. However, if you see a deed history, there's quit claims, there's special warranty deeds, there's all these other deeds. Definitely look at the history and see how the property is exchanged hands and interest has been transferred. Because for a quit claim deed, for instance, I'm going to know, hey, I'm going to pay not more attention, but I guess closer attention to who the grantor is and the grantee, because maybe they're related or maybe they're not related. And that's signaling to me that maybe an investor is already working this opportunity. Maybe they're already buying out interest
Mhm.
of the owners where probate hasn't been opened yet. So there's a lot of, I think, factors or key pieces of information you can pull from the deed, how ownership is held. I know, Al, you've been an amazing resource for me to understand. I have a husband and wife on title. All it says is husband and wife, which in my mind defaults to tenants in entirety or survivorship. Versus if it doesn't specify husband and wife, it doesn't specify how ownership is held, I'm going to default that to tenants in common, so a 50-50 split. So kind of knowing the nuances of what the language means, and if there isn't enough information in the deed, kind of knowing where to go and where to default, like where to start from, the tenants in common. I'm going to start there and proceed forward and kind of map out my process from there. So it feels very basic to say, but starting with the deed history and the ownership of record really is, I think, a very, very key factor in underwriting any opportunity.
Yeah, and doing your digging on understanding how the deed did flow and whose names are on there. Or maybe, sometimes you can find great information on deeds. Like if you find that the property maybe is titled in a trust, but nobody knows where the trust is, well, who prepared the deed? Was it a law firm?
Yes.
Was it an underwriter? And so then you can go to those people and say, hey, did you close that deal? Because if you close the deal, you should have those records on file. Maybe somebody can pull it. or maybe they need some kind of authority from somebody to be able to get it. So you never know. Those deeds have valuable information, like you said. And another thing that is super valuable, I think you guys have learned over time, is these death certificates, right? These death certificates have information on them, like the informant, their address, if you're able
Yes.
to order them, if you're able to get them. Walk us through some of these other mechanisms between being able to do these deals or maybe start tracking people down or locating or pulling other
Yeah.
documents.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, death certificates are a great source of information. It could also tell you, did this person die, married, unmarried, or maybe they have unknown on mother, father, married, all these different things. So that in my mind is a key of, okay, no one's probably pursuing this because they have to start from scratch or they have to go backwards in time to go forward, which I know Stephanie had mentioned, really going through that process on your last podcast episode. Um, that happens all the time where maybe, we have a deceased owner, there's no obituary for them anywhere. So we really have to go back in time to maybe find siblings or parents' obituaries. You'd be surprised how much information is shared maybe in your long lost cousin's obituary 15 years ago. So things like that, I think, are tips and tricks that not a lot of people know or have access to. But yes, death certificate can give you tons of key information. Um, but what I also like to look at, let's go back to the property appraiser, right? So you're starting your research there. You looked at the deed history, looked at the owner record, small things like what is the mailing address? Is the mailing address different than your subject property? Looking at the tax account, is your owner alive or deceased, but is there a homestead exemption on it? Is there a mail return flag on the tax account? So those, of course, this comes with practice, right? On how to really digest all the information that's available on those sites. Who paid prior year taxes? I know that that's not always available, but try to call the county. You'd be surprised how many
Mhm.
people are willing to help you and work with you. Also, adverse possession in the legal description. So things like that are kind of key indicators of, oh, maybe I should, do a little bit more due diligence on that adverse possession. It's noted in the legal description, or maybe I don't even want to touch that. I'm going to move on to the next opportunity. So just taking time, slowing down, and really just trying to digest the information that's available to you and try to curate the information the best you can really will catapult you to the next stage and really know where to go from there. But mailing address, for example, a lot of times that's a key indicator of maybe someone who's paying the taxes because they're getting the notices. Is this a relative? Is it a trustee? Things like that. So mailing address is key for me, especially if it's different. If the property is vacant, but the mailing address is the same as the subject property, then I know, okay, maybe no one knows what's going on, or maybe the family doesn't know this person is deceased. So um, yeah, I would say start there and just try to find those gaps. That way you can fill in the information and know where to go.
Yeah, and all of this is great stuff for people out there that are listening, that are finding these deals. Two things that you mentioned that I'd love for you to touch on,
Yeah.
is the partial interest. You firsthand have been able to witness a walkthrough of me talking to you about a partial interest deal and what that potentially can look like. What have you seen since reviewing either numbers or potential deals that you've actually walked through this on? Like, I've seen the charts. Like, what have you seen be the positive, and what are some of the red flags to look out for? Because some people are trying to get into that game of buying the partials, but you also have to know, do your numbers work? Does it make sense to get in the deal? What's the overhead? How much are you going to be in on? What does that look like, Holly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this obviously comes with practice and repetition, but let's say you have a deceased owner and you're building out a family tree, and right now your heirs are cousins on the maternal and the paternal side. So, as we've known out, this can go into the 20s and the 30 level range. But let's say you have 15 heirs that are cousins for this decedent. Um, just as simple as, okay, how many heirs do you have on the paternal side of the tree? How many do you have on the maternal side? Let's say you only have 4 on the paternal, the rest of the maternal. My mind, I'm going to suggest pursuing the 4 heirs on the paternal side first, because that will give you the opportunity to acquire 50% of the estate, and then leverage that on the other side. However, let's say one half of the tree is not being cooperative, the other half is, you got to consider potential partition action. You're looking, okay, where are the maternal heirs located? So trying to piece together all the legal expenses for that, as well as the partition expenses and the probate expenses. What other vexations are on the property? Is there a tax sale coming up, or foreclosure auction? Um, really trying your best to uncover all of those vexations and put it in front of you and just say, okay, what is our pain in the ass versus return on investment? It's not just about underwriting the property, it's about underwriting the effort and knowing if it's really worth the risk, or worth the time and energy and expenses you might even have to front up front. So yeah, I think with interest splits in particular, or partial interest buyouts, it's really, at least for Florisel now, we try to uncover as much as we can on the front end, just so we're not wasting so much time and just going through it and acquiring interest here and there. We're really trying to be strategic about who we approach first. And that way, if that doesn't work, we can pivot. So I think it's just planning and preparing a little bit more ahead of time in order to have a game plan versus kind of going with the flow and then maybe getting stuck or paralyzed in the process.
Awesome. Great feedback on what you've seen in this process with partial interests. And you've seen the numbers. Like when you've actually crunched the numbers, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Sounds like a great opportunity to do partials, but the exit strategy or the end game to it just doesn't add up. And unless you have, really great numbers to work with, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And I feel like there's some that really need to look through their numbers, really crunch it and get it down. Another thing that you touched upon, Holly, that happens once in a while because you find that kind of deal is the ones where they're going through adverse possession. Talk to us about that little niche that can come up in a deal and how you navigate and handle that.
Yeah. Adverse possession is an interesting concept, but there are rules in Florida, and as I'm sure other states too, which definitely help. So, for instance, for adverse possession, of course, you get the signal if you look at the legal description on the property appraiser site that there's been an adverse possession claim filed. You can usually see that in the deed history sometimes too, but you might have to request a copy of the DR 452 form. You request it from the county, they'll provide that to you. And on that form, it will tell you who is the adverse possessor, when did they start adverse possessing the property, what sort of improvements have they made to the property, and of course, when was the form filed. That's pretty key. We've come across a couple of instances where the form is filed, let's say January 2020, but they're claiming they possessed it since 2018. And there's various things. Maybe they haven't paid 7 years of consecutive tax payments on time. A lot of people think, oh, if it's 3 years tax delinquent, I'll just pay those 3 years, that'll buy me 3 years, when really in reality you have to pay consecutively on time. Or maybe their tax payment history was interrupted by another taxpayer. So really just it's really easy to look up the guidelines and the regulations, but once you get that DR 452 form, kind of compare it to what are the requirements to adverse possession, what does the form say, and a lot of the times you can invalidate the claim just based on when the form was filed. I believe it needs to be filed within 6 months of possessing the property. A lot of times the form is filed a lot later, so that will instantly void the claim. So it may feel and look really scary when you see an adverse possession in the legal description, but honestly, if you can just take a few minutes, do some more due diligence, and get the form and compare it to the requirements, you'd be surprised how many of them can be voided almost instantly.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I get asked about adverse possession. It's a really tough statute to comply with. I mean, you have two of them. You have the color of title because you had a deed, a judgment, order, a decree, and then you have the one without color of title where that's what you're talking about, where they have to apply for the form, they have to cultivate it, improve the property, and pay back the taxes as well. So like there's multiple prongs. And I know in Florida, it's like a 30-day window that you have to get the DR 452 form and apply it with the property appraiser. It's like very, very specific. Like if you don't do it the right way with the without color of titles, very difficult to get through. And so I always find that it's very interesting when investors are coming across those types of leads and they're like, wait a second, it's a potential adverse possession. I mean, that has distress and blinking distress indicator lights of a potential probate or a pre-probate or a messy deal all day. Now it's a matter of, can you overcome that? Is there a way to get the squatters out or get the people out? Like, I called them for a while PAPAs, professional adverse possession artists. That was my acronym for some of the people. Yeah, PAPAs. Yeah, I don't know. I came up with that one day. I was really good with coming up with those acronyms. But yeah, great, interesting niche that people are always curious about, that want to get into it. Holly, let's talk about strategic prioritization, where your focus needs to be when you're drowning in leads. So you're getting all the probate leads, you're getting all these adverse possession, you're getting the partial interest, things are all piling up, right? But at the end of the day, you need to really navigate and prioritize these leads. How are you doing it? What does your system look like?
Yeah. And I think this is where a lot of investors or people burn out, right? Because not all records deserve your time or attention. And so coming up with your own scoring method of, effort versus outcome, pain in the ass versus return on investment, I think is really key for you to learn in the beginning on how you're identifying those opportunities. So, for me, I'm thinking, what are the hoops that we have to jump through legally, emotionally, logistically, and what is the potential outcome if this hits, and is it worth it at that time? So I know, Al, you've saved the day plenty of times where we've got a property in foreclosure. The owners are alive. They reside out of state. They're just absentee. And, they call us the day before the sale. They want to work with us when they've been ghosting us for months. So maybe we had connected with them before. They call us back the night before, the day before, and now we're rushing to you to say, hey, could you potentially submit an emergency motion to reschedule? And that's not guaranteed, right? So it could be very chaotic, very stressful, and of course, it's taking you away from what you should be doing to help us out. And then we're hoping it gets approved, and we're also out those legal fees if it doesn't. So it feels like a lot of work to help protect somebody's credit when they were ghosting you for some time, or maybe it falls through. So I think depending on what your ideal seller avatar is, I would say lean closely into that, go deep into kind of that vexation mix. If it's deceased owner, tax delinquent, vacant for a starting point, I think that's amazing. Of course, there's a lot of people working in that space, but if you can find the opportunities where the mailing address is the same as the subject property, it's vacant. Maybe you're looking at cousins on the family tree as intestate heirs, those kinds of things. That's what we like to pursue, just because many people don't go that far. Or maybe you're looking at foreign mailing addresses. Maybe you want to focus there. So those little identifiers really can help you prioritize your properties or your records based on those data points. But we've been testing HOA and foreclosure leads because debt info is pretty clear. There's usually an urgent timeline against it. So depending on whether the owner is alive or deceased, we usually know what that game plan looks like. But I guess it just depends on, again, your ideal seller avatar, and of course this can change over time. So yeah, I would say try to find out what your ideal avatar is, hone in on that, and that will help you prioritize which records to pursue first.
Great. And that's fantastic that you've been able to provide this kind of valuable information to people out there on how to get through these types of leads, right? Like how do you sift through them, what to prioritize on. And Holly, it just totally hit me. And I'm like, wait a second, we didn't even have this on our list. Building out family trees. Like,
Yeah.
talk to us about what that's like building out family trees, because here we go. If you get into these messy deals, you're getting into deeper deals. You have to have skills. And one of the skill sets that's essential is to understanding how to build them out. And you, me, and Stephanie worked on that one. I mean, well, you and Steph worked on that for a long time, and then got me in to confirm everything and try to see who do we not need, who do we need. But building out family trees, we worked on one that was really complicated that ultimately,
Yeah.
thank goodness, only resulted in two people that needed to be
Yeah.
to sign everything. So how do
Yeah.
you recommend people build out family trees, and like what would you do if you're just starting out to build this out?
I think, for me, I had a little bit of a leg up because my sister trained me along with Mark Rido with Florida Still Now. So I had two people showing me their styles and how they build out family trees. But I use Ancestry.com. It's super, super helpful. And whereas my sister, she also uses Ancestry.com, but she's more of a pen to paper gal. I just like to kind of get in and start building the tree, because the great thing about Ancestry is it will give you hints along the way. And of course, you need to give it a good solid starting point. You don't need to know all the details, but it will help you in building that tree, which is amazing. So I would definitely recommend checking out ancestry.com. They have a ton of training and resources as well, as you can find, of course, on YouTube and things like that. And me and my sister are available, for people who want to learn how to do this. Please reach out to us. It's definitely a fun and unique skill. And I mean, I even suggest practicing on your own family tree and just getting the hang of it there. That way you can start to understand, okay, how do the census records work? Newspapers.com is kind of combined in with ancestry.com. So learn how to use the search navigation and verify the right people in ancestry.com has been a game changer. And especially for that deal, Al Evanowski. Evanowski, I believe it was a Polish last name, and over the last 50 years, it had changed spelling. So it was Evanowski with a Y and an I. And so it was pretty tricky to build that family tree out and feel good in, like, this is Sophia. This for sure is Sophia. But luckily, one of our actual heirs, one of the two, was able to provide us with an Excel spreadsheet that kind of had a great starting point of, here's kind of the family. I have some dates of birth. I have some dates of marriage, like amazing stuff. So it doesn't hurt to ask if any of your heirs or any of your POCs have knowledge of how the family worked. And again, if there's a tree that I'm struggling to find information on Ancestry, I know, okay, I'm going to try to build it out as best I can. And then I'm just going to try to find someone to call, and we'll verify the information together if they have intimate knowledge of the family history, which is also a game changer, because that helps me prepare my notes for you and your team and getting the affidavit of heirship kind of dialed in. And if there's anything I can do on the front end for research to help you on the back end, I definitely want to take part in that. So I would definitely suggest ancestry.com. But honestly, obituaries are also super key in building out family trees, and that you can just do pen and paper if you don't want to invest in a subscription to Ancestry yet. But yeah, that's what I would say, is just practice using obituaries, mapping out that process on paper or Excel, Google Sheets, something like that first, kind of understand the process, and then start testing out your experience with Ancestry. And you would be blown away how fun it is. Also frustrating and tiring, but it really is fun when you start to get somewhere.
Amazing. And yeah, I know a lot of people have talked about Ancestry and starting from there and then building it out, but also understanding, like, what does the flow look like? Is it a surviving spouse, and how many kids ever? I know you and Steph have gone back and forth over this, like, how many kids ever? And if they died, did they die before? Did they die after? A lot of people don't know that the dates of death matter in these scenarios and what that equates to. And so then you have no children. Maybe a parent was still alive at the time of death. Maybe none of those, but brothers, sisters, ever, half brothers, half sisters, nieces, nephews. But yeah, the one that you and I walked through was aunts, uncles, and cousins. And that's where we really had to do a deep dive on how many aunts and uncles, how many of them died before, how many of them had cousins, how many of them died before, how many are alive. And there was two, and it was crazy because does the line stop there? Does it keep going? And just going back and forth over those different scenarios, a lot of people just don't know the answers to that. And so that's why you got to walk through this, learn from it. And that's why I love what you're talking about, Holly, with building out family trees. And I know Dave Day is another one that talks about that, is building out family trees, huge proponent of doing that. And we're seeing more and more people building that out as they're doing their data and everything. Holly, another thing that I know is important to you is pattern recognition and the invisible work that drives big wins. Talk to us about what this is for you and why that matters.
Yeah, I think this is something that comes with experience over time, because what I'm doing with pattern recognition, it's almost like tuning in to a frequency, right? So like the best leads don't scream at you. Those are the ones that most people might be going after. These records, these leads typically like whisper. And so we're really trying to hone in on, okay, how can we break through this opportunity? I know I mentioned earlier about the quick claim deed, but let's say, for instance, you use PropStream. What I like to use PropStream, if I'm pulling up a property, starting my research, I pull it up in PropStream. I have it up on the property appraiser site, and I'm just cross-referencing both platforms to see if there's any new information or patterns it could tell me. And what I've come across multiple times is in PropStream, it'll show a quick claim deed recorded, and in the property appraiser, it's not there. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is another investor who's bought out some interest, or maybe they're just transferring it and it hasn't recorded yet. And so then from there, I'm going into public records and locating that quick claim deed to see what kind of information it's telling me. And depending on who I identify as the grantee, who is acquiring this interest, I might say, hey, another investor is working it. It's really not worth it to potentially partition. So it's really, if I see a name that's popping up in different records recorded with the courts, maybe I'll pay a little bit more attention to that, and that builds momentum. And that's typically what I follow, because a lot of the times it's often the quiet ones that really turn into the six-figure deal.
Yeah, they are the quiet ones that turn into the six figure, and they're the ones that people aren't paying attention to, right? And so the data's out there. It's a matter of doing your digging. It's a matter of doing a deep dive, and eventually you'll start realizing that you're developing a skill set that's built to last. That's why I love being in probate every day. I mean, from the time I started really hammering it back in 2018, 2019, and we were doing some things a little bit in 2017, but it wasn't until like late 2018, 2019 when I was like, whoa, boom. And then I saw like what was happening. And now it's pattern, repetition after another. Dave Day talks about it, rinse and repeat, right? Just again and again, high volume. So the more you start doing it now, the more you learn, the more you can learn from people like Holly and Stephanie Shepard. It can be a game changer for your business. And for people that are doing deals on a high volume or want to do deals on a high volume, that's where this whole thing is at. I really believe that. And Holly, you are amazing. I love seeing what you're doing. I love seeing what you're able to put together with Florida Sell Now, and as that research specialist behind the scenes, pulling death certificates and finding people. It's so amazing. So I just got to say thank you so much for being amazing on the team and working with everybody on these probates.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is so much fun to work with you. And I've learned so much from you, even just those quick questions where you're like, hey, this language doesn't matter in this case, or it does. And I think having access to you, I feel really lucky. But if that's another suggestion, I would say to your audience is connect with Al. But also, leverage your network and don't be afraid to ask the questions, even if it feels rookie, because that's when you learn the most. And of course, through others' experience. But I am so grateful for you and your team, and it's just made it so much more fun for me.
Thank you, Holly. And I'm sure you would believe it. People have reached out to us because of the show. And eventually, there's people doing deals in
Yeah.
Tallahassee and Pensacola and Jacksonville and Tampa that eventually they'll hear it. They'll say, hey, I got a probate. They know where to go. So it's always awesome, but it's always the digging and the research that goes behind it. Cause they want to do probate, but how? Where do we go? What's the
Yeah.
sell? What death certificates are we looking for? Or how do we find the stuff on the probate checklist? Things like that.
Yeah.
Always, all the time. Holly, this has been awesome. I do a segment for my guest towards the end of my show called Signature Questions. So there are a few questions that I have for you that I feel would be different on your end versus other guests. So what advice would you give to real estate investors, newer seasoned, that are trying to navigate the 2025 and beyond market?
That's a great question. Can you repeat it for me, Al? I'm sorry.
Yeah. What advice would you give new or seasoned investors that are trying to navigate through this kind of market in 2025 and 2026 or beyond?
Yeah, I would say start connecting with people, network. I know the REI SIFT community is really huge, and I love being part of that community. Al, I know you're there too. Getting involved, I think, with other investors and honestly, maybe just trading experience or trading like, hey, I'm happy to help you with some admin. Can you teach me how to do this? I feel like you'd be surprised how many people would take you up on that, just so you can get some skin in the game. But yeah, I would say just start networking and start connecting with people.
Love that. Love that. And it's all about making those connections and building the relationships now so that they can be
Yeah.
lasting. It just endless deal flow, endless opportunities, endless deals all the time. Holly, what do you find is some of your favorite software to work with when you're doing the research and you're doing the digging? Because I'm sure it's not just Google or maybe it is, or just Property Appraiser, but of course you got to be able to
Yeah.
categorize and crunch numbers. So what software do you use that can help leverage your business?
So at Florida Still Now, we use REI SIFT, and my sister uses it as well. It's an amazing CRM that you can upload all of your data, and it helps you truly visualize what records are stacked. So you might have tax delinquency, deceased ownership. Maybe there's a property going through probate. So depending on what list you're pulling, you upload it into REI SIFT. Tyler Austin is amazing, who created REI SIFT, and I feel like that's just been such a game changer. I'm spoiled in looking at REI SIFT. But if you are not ready maybe for a CRM like that, I would suggest just starting out with, I love PropStream. My sister has a case for Property Radar. So I think it just depends on which one you prefer. But I love to just pull up PropStream as I'm starting my research process just to make sure, PropStream might show me something like I mentioned before, that quitclaim deed that maybe I couldn't see on the property appraiser unless I did some additional due diligence. But even if I went into public records and I'm looking under the owner name, that quitclaim deed is not going to show up. So that's where PropStream in my mind is like, oh, giving me information that I would
Mhm.
not know about otherwise. Um, let's see what else. Oh, Ben Verified. Absolutely love Ben Verified as well for people searches. It's also been a game changer in telling us maybe when someone passed away and where they passed away. Gives me kind of a head start on, okay, I'm going to Google, Holly Subia passed away in Florida. I'm going to Google Holly Subia obit 2020 Florida, and that'll help me kind of hone in a little bit more. So I would say Ben Verified, PropStream, and then REI SIFT are my top three.
And I got to give a shout out to my guy, Tyler Austin, and the entire REI SIF community. We love the REI SIF
Yeah.
community, lots of people in there. And there's a lot of giving that happens in that community. When you see the comments and the questions that people post in the Facebook group, if you're not a part of that Facebook group, REI SIF real estate community, I'm sure Tyler will be on the episode, or somebody will drop it in. Stephanie will drop it in. But you got to be a part of that Facebook group and that community. And that CRM that Tyler has is a game changer. It's not just a CRM, but it has marketing behind it as well. And so you can incorporate both.
Absolutely.
And awesome stuff right there, Holly. Holly, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you face in your industry as a research specialist?
Yeah, I recently encountered this again, but I think it's just the beginning part of learning where the information is located. We're really spoiled in Florida where, I can go to the property appraiser, I can go to official records, court records. And even for me in the very beginning, understanding the difference between official records and court records, I think was really hard for me. Where my sister just is like, go here and do that and do this. So really understanding where the information is housed is a game changer. But of course, getting there means you got to search, you got to map out that process. And that could be really, frustrating. You're learning something, right? You're trying to put together the pieces. But if you can just stay there and just keep pushing and just basically map out that process for yourself, you're going to save so much time later down the road. And it really gets to a point where becomes fun. So I think a lot of people get stuck right just below that ceiling, but just keep going, testing different things out. Google is your best friend. But if you can map out that process for yourself, you're going to be ahead of everybody else. So I think it's just continue learning, continue evolving. I was recently tasked for a client to look at Arizona records, and Florida and Arizona, very different state, different process. And so I had to go through that again. It's just something we all have to do in the beginning. But if you can just continue pushing yourself and mapping out that process, you'll be set.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are fortunate because Florida has that sunshine law, open record access to be able to get, the property appraiser, these kind of documents, this access, and it's definitely very helpful. And then you go to another state and it's not like that at all, right? And then you're just like,
Right.
oh, what is this? Like, how do I get through this? Do I need to register for the clerk of courts? And that's another
Yeah.
great resource for people out there that don't realize it, that if you're trying to get access to court records, every county's got their own access, and you just got to register for it to be a public access user. So then you can be able to go in and pull records and go that route. But like you said, it's not that same thing in other states. And so that's a huge challenge that people face all the time. All the time I hear about it. Holly, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And we've dropped your information, where to find you, where to put you, where people can get in touch with you. And you're at Florida Cell now. For those that don't know, they're killing it in this market. A lot of deals. And it's because of rock stars like Holly that are out there that are doing this on a daily basis. So Holly, you're amazing. As I do at the end of my show, I do a segment called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Any lasting impressions you want to leave with the audience that they can take home, implement, and apply today. So final words, final thoughts, Holly Subia.
Yeah, I would say just, continue learning, be that lifelong learner, push yourself, leverage your network, or start building your network. And Al is a great place to start. And me and my sister are also available. But yes, just start learning. Just start. Don't wait for all the information. Just start.
Great. And reach out to Holly and Stephanie. They're both doing it together in this game, and they're both seeing the different things in this probate game and how to navigate through these messy title situations and finding heirs, finding death certificates, building trees. You want to learn from the best out there. So Holly, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And thank you for providing the value to the Al Nicoletti Show community and to all the people that constantly listen to this show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Al. Appreciate
And
it.
Of course. And I hope to see you and Stephanie soon at a presentation, walking us all through how to do this with Ancestry, building out trees and all that stuff. So can't wait. And I will be seeing you soon.
Thanks, Al. I'll see you.
All right. You got it. See you soon, Holly. All right, everybody, you heard it right there from Holly Subia. She is a gem when it comes to this business. You don't want to miss it. Go back, rewatch, check it out. And you're probably going to have to watch this a couple times because of all the information that's out there. And scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen. That's where you're going to get all of our contact information when it comes to YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all the social platforms, you name it. Follow us there. And again, you want to reach out to people like Holly Subia and Stephanie Shepard and people that are doing these deals on a high level. That's what this is. You got to find these people out there. So scan the QR code, follow us. We can't wait to see you next Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody. Take care. We'll see you soon.